Hey there, Shakespeare Shakers, and welcome to episode 8 of A Rose by Any Other Name, the vodcast that makes Shakespeare less of a tragedy and more of a triumph for your brain. I'm Mr. Rose, and in today we are racing towards the altar in Act 2, Scene 5, and Scene 6 of Romeo and Juliet. Love is in the air, the wedding is on, and the tension is growing like a vine in Friar Lawrence's garden. So let's jump in. Act 2, Scene 5. We are back in the Capulet orchard, where Juliet is absolutely bursting with anticipation. She sent the nurse to meet Romeo hours ago, and now she's pacing, desperate for news. When the nurse finally returns, she drags it out in quite a comedic way. She complains about her sore feet, her aching back, and her lack of breath. Juliet is not having it. She pleads, begs, and practically shakes the answers out of her. Finally, the nurse spills the beans. Romeo is waiting at Friar Lawrence's cell, and they're getting married today. Juliet is overjoyed. The nurse rushes off again to collect a ladder from Romeo's servant, which Romeo will use that night to climb into Juliet's chamber. The plan is in motion. This scene is light, it's comic, and it's joyful. Juliet's youth shines through. The nurse teases her, but we also see how deeply she cares. In Act 2, Scene 6. Now we shift to Friar Lawrence's cell. Romeo is glowing. He's on top of the world, declaring that no misfortune could outweigh the joy of marrying Juliet. Do thou but close our hands with holy words, then love devouring death do what he dare. Yep, that's some serious foreshadowing there, Romeo. Friar Lawrence urges moderation, warning Romeo, these violent delights have violent ends. He's saying, this love might burn bright, but it might also burn out fast. Passion can be destructive. Juliet arrives and Romeo is in full romantic mode. He asks her to speak poetically of her love, but Juliet, even the realist, says, they are but beggars that cannot count their worth. In other words, real love is too big for words, and with that, the lovers head inside. They're married, just like that. There's no grand ceremony on stage. It happens off stage. Why? Because Shakespeare wants us to feel the suspense. Everything's happening quickly, and we know that things are about to change. We're now heading into our theme talk, focusing on euphoria, warnings, and false control. Our first focus is on romantic euphoria versus reality. These scenes are bursting with the electric joy of first love. Juliet is overwhelmed with anticipation. Her dialogue is full of excitement, repetition, and eagerness. She's practically about to burst with emotion. Romeo, on the other hand, is soaring. He believes nothing, not even death, can overshadow the happiness of being with Juliet. Their love feels limitless, boundless, and urgent. Shakespeare uses this emotional high to draw us in. We feel the warmth and hope that they feel. But beneath the surface, warning signs start to creep in. The nurse's comic delay in delivering Romeo's message may seem harmless, but it eerily foreshadows a later moment when she can't bring herself to clearly explain Juliet's tragic situation, leading to some miscommunication and heartbreak. Then there's Friar Lawrence, who is the only character voicing caution. His line, these violent delights have violent ends, suggests that all consuming passion might lead not to joy but to ruin. These moments show us the duality of love. Remember, duality is the two sides. Love is beautiful, yes, but it's also fragile and flammable. The joy we feel here makes the downfall that follows hit harder. Shakespeare is building us up, only so he can break our hearts later. Our next sub-theme we're focusing on is foreshadowing and fate. So foreshadowing is one of Shakespeare's sharpest tools in Romeo and Juliet, and it's everywhere in these scenes. Romeo declares, then love devouring death do what he dare, which sounds dramatic and romantic, but to the audience it's chilling. We know that death will do exactly that. Meanwhile, Friar Lawrence warns that Romeo's love burns too hot. With these violent delights have violent ends. The warning is clear. The more intense the passion, the more violent the collapse. And the audience, already aware that this is a tragedy, hears those lines as echoes of what's to come. Shakespeare uses foreshadowing not to create suspense, but to make a point. Fate is inescapable. Even in moments of joy, tragedy waits in the wings. No matter how much Romeo and Juliet love each other, their society, their families, and the universe itself seem to be conspiring against them. These lines also raise the question: is it really fate, or is it impulsive human choice masked as fate? Either way, the future is already written, and that makes the present bittersweet. Our last sub theme is the illusion of control. There's a fascinating tension in these scenes between emotion and planning. On the surface, it looks like things are under control. The nurse is running messages, Romeo and Juliet have a plan, Friar Lawrence is arranging the wedding. But underneath, everything is chaotic and rushed. The nurse's teasing feels light-hearted, but it's also a reminder that communication in this play is often messy and delayed, and that has consequences. Friar Lawrence's hopes are noble. He believes that the wedding might end the family feud. But in helping Romeo and Juliet marry in secret, he's also fueling the secrecy and speed that will later spiral out of control. What we see here is that every character is trying to manage something that's moving faster than themselves. They're using logic to try and steer passion, but passion doesn't steer easily. It barrels ahead, and they're clinging to the reins. This is where Shakespeare's brilliance lies. He shows us that control is often an illusion. Even when people believe they're making smart, measured choices, they might actually be hastening disaster. It's a theme that deepens the tragedy because we realize that everyone means well, yet everything still falls apart. Let's have a look now at some of our key quotes. These violent delights have violent ends. This line is one of the most haunting examples of foreshadowing in the play. Friar Lawrence warns that passions that burn too hot, those violent delights, are destined to end violently. The antithesis between delight and ends creates a jarring tension between love and destruction, showing how closely joy and tragedy are tied together in this story. As a paradox, it forces the audience to consider how something so pure can lead to ruin. If you have too much of something, it causes you to be ill. It captures that central irony of Romeo and Juliet. The more beautiful the love, the more catastrophic its potential to end. He goes on to speak of fire and powder, which shows that the combination of one thing with another will result in devastation. This warning becomes a tragic echo throughout the rest of the play. Our next quote: "Do thou but close our hands with holy words, then love devouring death do what he dare." Romeo personifies death here, challenging it as though it were an enemy waiting in the wings. He elevates Juliet's love to something sacred, using religious imagery, the holy words, to suggest that their union is divinely approved. But through dramatic irony, the audience recognizes how tragically wrong he is. Death will come for him, and soon. His words, though full of poetic bravado, are unknowingly prophetic. Shakespeare uses this moment to show how Romeo's impulsive romanticism blinds him to reality. His love is sincere but dangerously naive. Our next quote: "I am the drudge and toil in your delight." This is said by the nurse. The juxtaposition of drudge and toil with delight sets up a comic contrast. While Juliet is glowing with joy, the nurse hams up her physical exhaustion. This hyperbolic complaint adds levity to the scene, making the nurse a source of comic relief. But it also reflects the depth of her devotion to Juliet. She plays the role of the caretaker, the messenger, and even the co conspirator. Her exaggerated suffering is affectionate teasing, but it highlights her importance in Juliet's emotional world. She's more than a servant, she's a stand in mother and a trusted confidant. They are but beggars that can count their worth. Juliet compares those who boast about their love to beggars, suggesting that true love is too deep and infinite to be measured. This metaphor not only contrasts Romeo's poetic flourishes, but it also reveals Juliet's emotional maturity. While Romeo spills extravagant metaphors, Juliet holds her feelings close, showing some restraint and a more introspective take on love. The contrast between them enriches their relationship. Romeo brings passion, and Juliet brings grounding. Shakespeare is showing us that love can be loud or quiet, and both can be powerful. Had she affections and warm youthful blood, she would be as swift in motion as a ball. Juliet uses a vivid simile here to compare the nurse's slow return to the speed she'd expect from someone young and in love. The image of the nurse, as swift in motion as a ball, reflects Juliet's growing impatience, but also her youthful exuberance. Shakespeare uses this moment to highlight Juliet's naivety and emotional vulnerability. She's experiencing the thrill of love, but doesn't yet understand the cost that may come with it. Come, come with me, and we will make short work. For by your leaves you shall not stay alone, till Holy Church incorporate two in one. Friar Lawrence invokes religious symbolism with Holy Church incorporate two in one, reflecting the sacredness of marriage. He acts as both a spiritual guide and a social ally, binding them together despite his earlier reservations. But his comment about making short work is laced with foreshadowing. Everything in their relationship happens quickly, and not all of it ends well. Shakespeare subtly critiques the rush and secrecy surrounding the marriage while maintaining a tone of solemnity. We are now moving on to our reflective questions. So, why does Shakespeare delay the wedding scene by keeping it off stage? Well, Shakespeare's decision to keep the actual wedding ceremony off stage is both deliberate and meaningful. By doing this, he shifts the audience's attention away from the formality of ritual and toward the emotional stakes of the characters. The wedding isn't about tradition, it's about tension. By avoiding a stage ceremony, Shakespeare preserves the intimacy and secrecy of Romeo and Juliet's union. Their love is private, hidden from the world, and the offstage marriage reinforces that idea. At the same time, it creates suspenseful silence. We know that they're married, but we don't see the vows. This gives the scene a dreamlike quality, while also allowing the audience to focus on what really matters, not the wedding, but what it sets in motion. It also reflects a central theme of the play, the contrast between public and private worlds. Their love exists in the shadows, while conflict rages in the open. Keeping the ceremony off stage helps reinforce the idea that their joy is fleeting and destined to be disrupted. Our second question is, why does Friar Lawrence's advice reveal what does Friar Lawrence's advice reveal about how he views love? Well, Friar Lawrence's advice to Romeo, wisely and slow they stumble that run fast, revealed a deeply philosophical and cautious perspective on love. He values love that is steady, thoughtful, and rooted in emotion rather than reckless passion. His repeated warnings throughout the play show that he's witnessed the consequence of acting too quickly and too emotionally. His advice is not just about love, it's about human nature. The friar sees how both love and hate, when left unchecked, can spiral out of control. In contrast to Romeo's impulsiveness, the friar represents reason, reflection, and moral structure. However, Shakespeare complicates this picture by having the friar contradict his own principles. Despite warning Romeo to slow down, he agrees to marry the couple in secret, feeding the very urgency that he's critiquing. This contradiction makes Friar Lawrence a rich, layered character. He's wise, but he's also human. He's a man of faith and reason, but also a participant in the chaos. His role invites us to ask, can good intentions outweigh poor choices? And what happens when the voice of reason joins the storm? Our last question is, how does Juliet's impatience in scene 5 show her growth or youth? Well, Juliet's growing impatience while waiting for the nurse is a powerful window into both her emotional intensity and her evolving character. On one hand, her behavior reflects classic traits of youth. She's impulsive, she's overwhelmed by love, and she doesn't yet understand the complexity of what she's entering into. She's pacing, pleading, and even scolding the nurse with playful frustration. But on the other hand, this impatience is tied to her emotional courage and decisiveness. Juliet has moved quickly from the obedient daughter in Act 1 to a young woman who is now willing to challenge social rules, take emotional risks, and choose her own future. She may be impatient, but that urgency driving is driven by her desire to take control of her life. Shakespeare presents her as a blend of innocence and strength. Her youth shows in her urgency, but her growth shows in her willingness to act. She's not passively waiting to be married off. She's actively arranging her own future, even as the world around her begins to unravel. And just like that, it is the end of episode 8 by A Rose by Any Other Name. We've had eager hearts, secret plans, and poetic warnings. Romeo and Juliet are now married, but that means the stakes are higher than ever. Next time in Act 3, we're heading into dangerous territory. Fights will break out, loyalties will be tested, and everything we love might just start to unravel. Until then, love wisely, wait patiently, and beware of violent delights. See you later.